Hey folks, welcome back for another episode of Code Club. In the last episode, I told you about an email I got from Georg Anderson, who answered my call to send me interesting plots that he found in his work. And so this was data being represented from a survey where they looked at farmers and non-farmers and they asked them how they valued different things like biodiversity, open landscapes, recreation, cultural and historical things, right? And then on their scatter plot, they plotted not farmer on the x-axis and farmer on the y-axis, along with the point. And they colored the point and the text for that point according to how different the perception was. And overall, as their title says, the values vary little between farmers and non-farmers. In the last episode, I made my own version of that plot using a lot of the same theming that they had in their plot, but of course, different data. I simulated mine, and I didn't have access to all of the labels that they had, and so I made up my own labels, okay? And so you can see that previous video to see how to make this. Well, in this episode, I want to do something slightly different. I want to make what I call a slope plot. And so what a slope plot would be is on the x-axis, I would put farmers and non-farmers, and then I would have a line for each of the 20 different values, and the slope of the line would indicate whether the perception had changed, and kind of the height on the y-axis of the line would indicate the overall favorability or importance that farmers and non-farmers would put to that value. You might remember, if you've been watching my videos for a while, that way back, I did something like this with COVID vaccine data, of looking at people's perceptions of whether or not they would take the vaccine. This was before the vaccine was actually available, and there was some survey data looking at people across maybe a dozen or so different countries. I'll put a link to that up here if you want to go check out that. I did a whole bunch of videos on different ways of looking at paired data like this, and if you like this, you'll definitely like what I had in that series. Here in our studio, I have some code to get going with. This is the same code that we started with in the last episode. If you want to get all of the code that I'm generating today, there's a link in the description to a blog post for today's episode that you can go to, and you get all the code that I am generating in today's episode so that you can play with it yourself and perhaps adopt it for your own usage, okay? So again, we now have this data frame called survey. It has the 20 different values and the rate of favorability by farmers and non-farmers. Again, this data is all made up. It's just meant to kind of give an example of what this type of paired data might look like. So to generate this plot, I'm going to want to map farmer or not farmer to the x-axis and then the rate to the y-axis. So I'm actually going to need to do some more data modification to get to that point. So we're going to need to do a pivot longer. So we'll do survey, pivot, longer, and we'll do calls. We'll do farmer and non-farmer. And we'll do names _2. And we don't have to do this, but that's what I like to do. We'll say population, and values to will be rate, and it's not happy because names2 has to be a character. Always forget whether or not names2 and values2, those column names, need to be characters or if they can be an object. So running that, we now get 3 columns, the value, the population, and the rate. So now we can go ahead and pipe this to ggplot. AES on the x-axis, we'll put population. On the y-axis, we'll put the rate. And then we're going to draw separate lines, and we're going to want to group the data by each of the values and telling geom_line effectively what points to connect. So we'll then do group equals value, and then we'll do geom_line. And so now we see on the right side what our plot looks like, right? So each of these lines represents a different value in terms of, the things people like about, say, living in a rural environment. I think maybe I'd like to have non-farmer on the right left and farmer on the right, if only because in the original plot they had non-farmer on the x-axis and farmer on the y. I normally think of x as kind of being the reference point. So let's go ahead and flip that, and we can flip that using mutate. And so we'll do mutate on population. And we're going to make a factor of population. And we'll do levels equals, and then we're going to do non-farmer and farmer. And so again, what this is doing is this is making a factor, a ordered variable of population, so that we are now giving it the order we want, non-farmer, farmer. By default, it goes alphabetical, so farmer would become before non-farmer because F comes before N. It's now upset with us because I put levels outside of the parentheses. So we need population, comma, levels on that. And so let's make sure we've got the right parentheses. There we go. And so now we see we've got non-farmer and farmer with our population. I think this is a good start. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. So we'll do ggsave slope plot.png. I'll do width equals 4, height equals, let's try 7. And that gets us a pretty tall plot. Maybe what we'll do is shrink it down a bit. So maybe let's make this 5. And I think that looks pretty decent. We might fiddle with the aspect ratio a little bit as we go. I'm going to start cleaning things up a little bit. So let's clean up the X and Y axis labels. And we can do that with the labs function. So we'll do labs X. I'm going to make null because I think it's obvious that that's the populations. Y, I'm going to say, so I'll say percent favorability. So that gets us percent favorability on the y-axis and gets rid of our title on the x-axis. I would like to customize non-farmer and farmer, however. We can do that with scale x discrete. For our breaks, we could have non-farmer and farmer. And then our labels, we'll do non-farmer and farmer. And we'll then add that in. And so we lost the non-farmer. How did we lose the non-farmer? I forgot the R here, right? All right, now we've got non-farmer and farmer. As I'm doing this, I've been thinking of a different way that we could do this. So I'm going to go ahead and comment out the scale x discrete for now. And actually back in our factor, we could do it here. We could do labels equals non-farmer and farmer. Again, that gives us our labels back that we had. So you can define the labels like we did here as a factor or here in scale x discrete. I think I'm going to leave it in scale x discrete just because that's where I initially had it, but know that either way works just fine. And run this again, we get everything back. That's good. I don't like these tick marks on the x-axis, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. And so we've seen that with theme, and I'll do axis.ticks. I think I'll get rid of them on both the y and the x-axis. So we'll do element blank. Those go away. So there's a couple things that I'm wrestling with in my head right now. So the first is the overall theming. I do not like the gray background with the white grid lines. I would rather it be a bit cleaner. I also don't really know what I want to highlight in these data, right? And so what I'd want to highlight, I'd then want to add color to, right? And so maybe what we could do would be to like highlight those things that are more favored at a higher level by farmers than non-farmers, right? And that could then be part of our title. The other thing that I'm thinking is I want to be able to put in the 20 different labels to indicate what each line represents. So maybe we'll start there. And we talked about this in the last episode, the library gggrepel. So we'll do library gggrepel. And so we're going to add a geom text repel. And this needs a label. And so here in ggplot, we could go ahead and do label equals value. And so what we get is the label on both sides. So I see like walkability, walkability, bicycling, bicycling, right? That's not quite what I want. And so I think what I will do is I'm going to go ahead and bring this part of the pipeline up with everything else. And then I will break this here and we'll do survey and pipe that in. And so I'll go ahead and rerun this stuff. That gets us what we had before. So my plan is to take survey and filter it so that I only get it on one side or the other. Yeah, so what I will do is I will do survey and I'm going to do let's do slice sample. And I'm going to do n equals 1. So this will get one row, and I want to use by equals population. So I get one row for each population. And so that did not do what I wanted to do. I wanted one row by each value. All right, I think someone said that. I heard you. And so now we get, one row from each value. And we can then say this is going to be the subset on that. And let me kind of rerun everything with my seed so that we're all using the same stuff. And let me do it again because I misspelled subset. All right, so now what we can do in geom-text-repel, I can say data equals subset. And I think that that should overwrite survey coming into here, right? So now we have our title only appearing on one side of each of the lines. So we're going to have to probably do this in a couple steps, but if we go ahead and do direction equals y, what we'll find now is that our label is centered on the x-axis, and it's basically dodged or moved on the y-axis. So walkability is below, bicycling below, I think farm stands is below, and education is above, right? That we see everything is pretty well centered. What I'd like to do, though, is to now dodge things off to the right. To the right for the things on the right, and left for the things on the left. But because we're going in both directions, we're going to probably going to need to have our own nudge factor. Let's split this subset up a little bit further. And so let's do subset farmer, and we'll do subset filter population equals farmer. And so now what we'll see is that these are all the farmer values, and we can do the same thing for non-farmers. And we'll do non underscore here. And then we'll do two geom-text-repels. So let's do one for subset farmer. And we'll do the same thing, but for non-farmer. Basically looks the same, I know. But now for the stuff on the left, the non-farmer, we're going to nudge to the left. And for the farmer on the right, we're going to nudge to the right. And so let's come up here again to geom-text-repel, and we'll do nudge x. And so this is farmer, which was on the right. So let's do like 0.3. And then for non-farmer, we'll do nudge x equals negative 0.3. That's better. So let's go ahead and left justify the things on the left and right justify the things on the right. And so let's come back and we can add hjust here. Hjust equals 1 for right justification, and then hjust equals 0 for left justification. Now it's left justified, whereas before it was centered, right? Or right justified. And so now we need to move those nudges out even further. And so let's do 0.5 and negative 0.5. Let's see if we can go a little bit further. Let's do like 0.75 and negative 0.75. So I think we need to nudge it even further because like population density and peace and quiet are coming into the plotting window area. And so let's do 1 and negative 1. Let's just go crazy. Negative 1 and 1. So we're still running into problems with things like population density, historical value, peace and quiet. I think the font is just too big. We could do size equals 3. I'm going to be smart and do size equals 3 on there and 4 on the other side. And I think I like what I have on the right side, which I think was 3. So let's go down to 3. Wow, I was able to do both at the same time. So I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and remove the background, and I want to make this segment gray, so it doesn't appear that this line is continuing, say, like into bicycling. So we can do segment.color. I'll do gray. And so now we see that that segment is gray, and that's going to be a more muted color. I like that. Let's go ahead and bring that down for the other side. So now I'm going to turn off the back. I'll do theme classic. So I like that. It's a lot cleaner. As I'm looking at this, I'm kind of thinking that I would like to have kind of my axis line inside here. But I'm not totally sure that I can do that. So let me see what we can do. Why don't we start by maybe making the aspect ratio a little bit shorter and fatter? And so let's do width equals 6, and we'll leave height at 5. So I think this is going to give us a little bit more room. I'm going to try to do this with annotate, but before I do that, I think I'm going to remove some of the padding that we have over here on the right now to kind of give us a better sense of kind of the way things lay out. So coming back up here to our nudge x, let's drop that down to 0.5. So I think 0.5 is good. We'll stick with that. And now what I want to do is I'm going to construct a vertical line here. So let's go ahead and add a geom line. And we'll do x-intercept. And I think our non-farmer is at 1. So let's try like 0.75 and see where that puts us. Not bad, not bad. Let's move it over to the right a little bit so that we have some space there kind of between our labels and the line itself. And so let's go to say 0.8. I mean, that's not a lot. Let's just go to 8.5, and I think that'll be good enough. Now we need to get our labels on the y-axis pushed over to the line. I'm going to do that with annotate. I'm sure we could do something with margins, like left margins on the axis text, but that's going to get kind of funky. So again, we'll do annotate, and the geom we're going to apply is text. And then y, we're going to give it a vector of value, so 0, 20, 40. Yeah, I think that's good. Maybe we want it to go up to 60. So let me hold off on this for just now. And let's add scale y continuous, and we'll do limits from 0 to 60. And that gets us a 60 up at the top there, okay? So let's go ahead and do 0, 20, 40, 60. And our annotate here. So that's going to be our y positions. We're going to have the same thing. We're going to copy that for our labels on that. And then we also need an x position. So our line is at 0.85. Let's try x of 0.8. And it's upset with me because unknown parameters labels. Maybe what I want instead is label. There we go. That's pretty nice. So the font on this label is a little bit bigger than we've seen before. So if we come back here, let's go ahead and put in a line break here, and we'll do size. Let's try 3. I think I got pretty close. I'm going to press my luck and try 3.5. And yeah, that's a little bit bigger. Whatever, I'm going to roll with 3.5. That's fine. I think what I'm going to do for my labels actually is make it with a %, and then I'll say favorability coming in. So let's do that. So let's come back here where we had our label, and we'll make this 0%, 20%, 40%, and 60%. And then we're going to have to bump that over a smidge. And so let's see, where would we put that? Here, let's try 0.78. That's over. That looks pretty good. And then we'll put favorability on the inside of the line. And let's see, we'll do annotate. And again, text, or y, x is going to be 0.88. And our y, let's put that at like 62. And the label will be favorability. And I put that too far up there. So let's go ahead and put it at 61. Yeah, it didn't like that either. So I think what we'll do actually, because it's going beyond the plotting window, I'm going to use the clip argument in chord Cartesian. So we'll do chord Cartesian clip equals off. And I'll do ylim from 0 to 60 and add a plus there. And I'll go ahead and remove this scale y continuous. And that puts favorability right smack dab on that. Maybe what I can do is let's right justify it right above where it is, so it goes right up to that line. And so let's see, we had favorability. So let's put this up to like 63, and then we'll do hjust equals 1. I can go over a little bit more to the left. I think I put 8.8 and it should have been 0.85 because I think before I was going to have it on the inside. Now we're going to have the outside. So let's do 0.84. Cool. All right. So now what I want to do is go ahead and remove all the real axis information. So I will come in here then, and I'll do axis.line element blank, That got rid of my lines. Cool. I'm also going to get rid of the title and the axis text. We'll do axis.title equals element blank, axis.text, element blank. Oh, I got rid of my x-axis text. Didn't mean to do that. X-axis text, axis text.y was what I wanted to get rid of. So now that I've been looking at this, an idea comes to me for how to modify the color. And I think what I want to do is if it's increasing, I'm going to put it on the right side and make it red. And if it's decreasing, I'm going to put it on the left side and make it blue. So again, if we look at survey, we have 3 columns. We have the value, the population, and the rate. And I want to know the difference between farmer and non-farmer. So let's come back up here. And I'm going to take survey. And I'm going to look at the difference between the 2 rows, the farmer and the non-farmer row, right? And so to do that, I think what I will do is a group by value. And so what we get then is a grouping of our data frame by the value. And what I want is the larger of the 2 values within the group, right? And so what I could do then would be to do slice max on rate. And this then gives me for each of the 20 values, the population that had the higher rate. And I think that's what I want, right? We could also think about the difference, but maybe we won't worry about that so much just yet. And so I'll go ahead and call this the subset, right? And then we'll have subset farmer is going to be where the population is farmer, subset non-farmer, non-farmer. Okay, so let's try this. And so now things that are increasing are on the right, decreasing are on the left. Now let's see if we can color the line by the amount of change. And so for that, if we again think about survey, so we have the value and we have the rate. And so if we take our survey, which is this first block, and I pipe this to group by value, I can then mutate to make a diff column, which is going to be the difference in rate between the 2 rates, right? And so the first rate is farmer and the second is non-farmer. And so we'll do rate bracket 1 minus rate bracket 2. Now when we look at survey, we see the diff, right? And so now what we can do, I think, is color the line by that difference. So we'll go ahead and run all these other things. And then in here, we'll go ahead and do color equals diff. And what we get is we get a gradient. It's not exactly what we want, right? And so it starts negative and goes very positive. And I think bicycling is the biggest fall off, right? And so maybe what we could do is add in here scale color gradient 2. And let's see what that starts out with. Very cool. And I think ultimately the problem is going to be that our lines, some of them are too light, right? Like this one here, you can see there's something there, but it's like commerce, right? And there's one down here that's basically white as well. So maybe what we could do would be to instead make all of our labels black. So let's go ahead and do that. And we can do that up here in geom text repel, where we could then do color equals black. And we'll do the same thing for our other one. And so now all of our text is black. And of course, there's going to be some lines in here that we just can't see. I'm okay with that. I wonder if we could make the middle color gray. So let's look at scale color gradient 2. So in scale color gradient 2, I see there is a midpoint that's white. So maybe we could try scale color gradient 2 mid equals gray. And that gets us a middle color, although our colors here are pretty miserable looking. Why don't we, instead of using the muted blue and red, let's go ahead and make them the full. So I think the bottom was low, and we'll make that blue, and then high we'll make red. And I think that looks a bit better. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I think that looks pretty slick. So now we have this legend, which I don't really care to keep. I think it's kind of obvious what's going on. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that legend. So for geomline, then I can do show.legend equals false. So that goes away and we're back to what we have here. Maybe I'll go ahead and make farmer and non-farmer bolded, axis.text.x, element text, and I'll do face equals bold. And maybe I'll throw in a title back up here with labs, and we'll do title, and we'll say the main difference in favorability between farmers and non-farmers is their opinion of bicycling and walkability. And of course that gets us a really long title. And so to fix that, I'm going to use library ggtext, because that will get us the ability on our plot.title to use element text box simple. And so as we've seen perhaps in other videos, this gets a little bit funky with the margins. I'm going to make this bold as well. So we'll say face equals bold. And then we also want a margin. So I'll do margin equals margin B. Let's do 10. That cleans it up a bit. Maybe we can make the face of that font a little bit bigger in the title. I'll do size equals 15. I want it to be a little bit bigger. I'm getting greedy. Let's do 20. I like that. That's cool. Now I'm pretty happy with this. All right. I think this looks pretty slick. I wasn't totally sure how it was going to come together. And I kind of like it. The y-axis still sticks out to me as being a little bit weird. I would make it gray to be a little bit more muted, but then we've got all these like gray lines going all over the place. I don't know. Perhaps you could also do a thing like if there wasn't really a difference, like kind of these gray lines that we've seen at different points, then maybe we would think about just totally removing it from the data set, because, if like commerce isn't different in perception between farmers and non-farmers, why even show it? Like, is that notable? I don't think so, right? So on the whole, I'm happy with this. I think this is good. I'm grateful that my emailer, Georg Anderson, got me thinking about this, and I think this is a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed making this moved in y-axis as well as the slope plot. So you'll have to tell me which you prefer. Do you prefer the slope plot or the scatter plot? Again, it's the same data depicted in two different ways. So let me know down below in the comments which of these two you prefer. Again, these are not real data, so don't get like really excited about these results because it's all made up. I think it's pretty slick, and really grateful for the input of giving me the plot that has motivated these couple of videos. My inspiration kind of came to me here in the last few moments of the video, and perhaps you could detect that in my energy as we were going along. Well, I would really appreciate it if you sent me your favorite plot for me to give my treatment to, of kind of talking through how I would think about approaching the plot to recreate it, then recreating it in a video, and then remaking it or doing a makeover on that plot as we've done today. So thanks again for watching. Please tell your friends about what we're doing here, and I'll see you next time for another episode of Code Club.